that judgment piece comes off and it bends a little bit. So there is a person place thing that is really caused the bend in your frequency in regards to how you are tuned.
That confirms what I had discovered last night.
Yeah, you want to share?
I could feel the energy of the solar flares building up,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't sleep. And so it's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna use the energy. And so I went to my phone booth to God, the shower, and I'm standing in the shower, and it suddenly occurs to me there's these people that I need to forgive. So it's interesting. So you confirm that for me because I was like, oh, that's interesting. I haven't thought about these people in a long time because basically I just decided, you know what? They're toxic. I don't want to deal with them.
Who's George?
My late husband.
Oh.
This is Michael Lane, and this is the Wonder Network, where we discuss healthy options for humanity. Since many of you have been asking about energy work and frequency healing and how we might incorporate that into many of our other healing modalities that we look at here at Wonder, we thought it would be fun to introduce you to our friend and energy intuitive, Tam. So today we've invited Tam to work with Dr. Val and do a session for her live on air. I also did a session reading with Tam this past week, so if you haven't seen the show yet, definitely take the time to watch when you can. She helped me with some issues I have been having, but also was able to assist in my dog's diagnosis since the veterinarian was a bit stumped on what to do. A little bit about Tam. Tam is an energy and medical intuitive and is also a certified Usui Reiki master. She's especially skilled in long-distance healing work for both people and pets. So she has been working with people around the world for over 20 years. It's an amazing show you don't want to miss, so sit back and enjoy the conversation.
Hey, Dr. Val, how are you?
Hey, Tam, I am doing pretty good considering all things. How about yourself?
Considering all things. Yes, I am doing great. Thank you. But I'm thinking about you and you're considering all things because I could kind of feel a tone there. You want to tell me what's going on? Maybe I can help a little?
That would be great. Well, you know how when you spiral up
Mm-hmm.
as you're evolving, there's that period of time where you're not accustomed to handling the various gifts that you have. And so things go really haywire for a while. You know
Mm-hmm.
that time?
Is that time now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just it's like, is it me? Is it the solar flares? Is it the universe trying to tell me something? Like, what in the heck is going on?
Hmm. Those are good questions, and I would say yes, truly. So let's get into this a little bit. And for someone who might be listening to the show, what I would say is there's a couple of things to be aware of. When you say spiraling up, I understand that, but what I'd love you to do before we get into everything is for you to explain to the best of your ability and how you're feeling, because you're the one who's feeling it right now.
Hmm.
What, how you're feeling, so the audience who someone might connect to it because they might be going through something similar. So,
Sure.
explain again to the best of your ability, and then we'll kind of go from there, and I'll jump in and kind of give you some feedback on what I'm seeing and also what I'm feeling.
Okay. So what the quantum physicists talk about is that, let me start even further back than that. When you get into the whole spiritual thing, at some point you run into the um, the idea that everything is always happening forever at the same time and in the same place,
Hmm.
which boggles a lot of people's minds. But the way that it works, according to the quantum physicists, is that there's a spiral of evolution. And so when you go up the spiral, you're going to what we call heaven. And when you go down the spiral, you're going to what we call hell. So it's really not, either or. It's like, if your belief system is that there's a heaven or a hell, okay, fine. You can have whatever you want in your creation. But the thing is that as you go up the spiral, you're doing what we call evolving up into higher dimensions. So 3D, the world as we see it, is 3D,
Hmm.
third dimension. And then there's all these other levels inside of that dimension. There's densities, there's dimensions, there's levels and realms and yada, yada, yada. All these things going on all at the same time. And so, for instance, when you see ghosts, they're slightly in a different level. They could be a level up or a level down from us. So the ones that we call evil spirits are actually earthbound um, souls that are down. And the reason they're down is because they have done horrible things and they're now earthbound. They can't leave. And I don't know when that changes, but or if it changes, I don't know. Whereas if you go up, you see what we call, benevolent spirits, angels, etc. And so what happens is we can see like a level down and a level up normally.
Hmm.
And so that provides for a lot of the things that people see in many times of stress, or if they're just sitting at home. And then there's things called magnetic imprints that are not actually spirits that are there. It's just like a recording that can happen with moments of high trauma or high joy.
Hmm. That's
So
correct.
it's kind of like imprinted on the field. And so when I talk about spiraling up, the next dimension up from this is like a quarter of a turn and slightly up. And so as we move up through these dimensions, the frequencies in our body change in all of our bodies. We're like an onion. We're like a whole bunch of nesting Russian dolls. It's 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 just really it's crazy the way it's all put together, but it's
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
And so, it reminds me of that, 100,000 angels can be contained on the head of a pin thing that's been said for many, many centuries. So, are we on the pin? Is like the entire human existence on the pin, the head of the pin? I don't know,
Yeah.
but they could be, you know?
Hmm.
And so we have all of these things happening in our same space time, but in different dimensions or different portions of the spiral. And so as our frequencies change, we either go up or we go down. And so we can see more of the up or more of the down. Personally, I prefer to see the up.
Hmm.
So I can feel when that change is happening within me because things really start to get wacky. And it takes a while to be able to get that under control. And as a healer, I can tell you that my healing energies go crazy and I start blowing up computers and shorting out all kinds of things and blowing up batteries and yeah. And I've had this happen far too many times.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that I can kind of slide into it easier now this time.
Gotcha.
But things are weird enough. Things are appearing and disappearing, and it's like either I'm losing my mind or something's really happening dimensionally.
Hmm.
And things are wonky out in the world too. So I know it's not just me. And I'm all for humanity, all. being able to spiral up. Um, but for me, I got to deal with what's going on with me here. So like, am I in 4D? Am I in 5D? Am I in 3D? It's like, where am I?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
I think that more stuff is going on in 4D than previously, or at least I'm more aware of it. And I know it's a perception change. It's like our consciousness is everywhere at once. And so where we choose to put our here and now, the kind of the needle of the consciousness is what determines what we see as our now. And I mean that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down quantum physics wise. But there have been plenty of instances of people that have found themselves like in Jurassic Park, and
Mm-hmm.
going, "Oh my God, I was floating in a pool at Woodstock," and all of a sudden I'm back in the prehistoric era with the dinosaurs. What do I do?
Yeah.
And all this stuff happens, and people don't talk about it a lot because in some circles, if you do that, they will send the guys in the white coats to cart you away. So
Well, there
so
was
it's
a
like,
plan for that, so absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, so what's interesting, because I think you bring up some really great points, and to some people that might be very, very confusing. For others who have been on a consciousness journey, who might study quantum physics, would probably understand some of these pieces. But I think that for what you're talking about, um, as large as it seems, what I'd like to do is maybe talk about kind of pulling it into a more of a simplistic form that would help us make sense of it, because I do agree with you. Everybody is going through something currently. And some people are going to totally listen to you go, I have no understanding of what that is, and yet they would agree with you without understanding because they're feeling it, right?
right.
And and I think what everything that I've been seeing and feeling myself, because I've had those moments as well, and in working with healers as a healer, what I find very fascinating right now is that many of us are on the front line as well as on the back of the line at the same time,
Yep.
because we're holding up the energy of those that are in transition transitioning in all kinds of ways, right? And we can get to that in a minute.
Hmm.
But we're also, because we've been in the front of the line for a while, so to speak, holding up the front end so that others can catch up. We're having a very difficult time because we've known the old energy very well. We're having to transition into a new energy while we are still moving forward in a new energy. So when you're asking about 3D versus 4D versus 5D, the answer truly is yes. We're kind of doing it all. And that's, I think, where people feel that they're spinning out, whether they're spinning up or down. I don't know if I would call it up or down per se, though I totally understand kind of where you're coming from. There's a spinning out of our energy field, like a spinning top, where
Uh-huh.
you can sit and spin literally in one place, and what I call that dropping density. So what tends to happen is we move faster. Think of it as and when I say faster, I mean faster in our frequency. We're all starting to move faster in that frequency, no matter where anyone is at. So when that happens, we start to spin things off of us. And so I call that dropping density because the dense material, the dense frequency from the 3D world is literally flying off because we don't need it anymore. We're becoming lighter, we're moving faster. So if you think of it as like, I like the analogy of a fan, like a ceiling fan, or could be a stationary fan or a propeller fan of some sort, where whenever it's standing still and it's turned off, right? That's in its most dense form because it's just sitting there as a 3D object. That's tangible. You can reach in, you can touch it. But if we turn the fan on and we speed up its frequency to get the cool air or to have lift off if it was a plane, right? Then
Hmm.
we have to move those propellers faster and faster and faster. Now, what's interesting to me about that, and the reason I like this analogy is because not only is it moving faster, but the faster the spin of the actual blades go, the least amount of visual you will have in regards to the actual blades, right? So the faster it spins, the more invisible it becomes. Now
Right.
the fan is still there. It's still spinning. The frequency is moving it, but as you move it faster and faster, now all of a sudden you can't see it. And the last thing you want to do is stick your hand in it because it's still lethal. It just happens to be something you cannot see where the actual blades are any longer because it's moving so fast. So
Right.
that's kind of how we are right now, as we are starting to move faster and faster and faster. And as we move faster, let's just say glitch in the matrix is going on, which is also happening. It's kind of like being on a circus ride that's spinning, because here we are spinning. And at the same time, now it's starting to move up and down. And depending on how the ride is built, that up and down movement can also start turning as well. So now you have a spin and an up and down movement and a turn, and it's enough to make anybody sick. So, what is happening with the physical, mental, emotional bodies in humans right now is we're having to transmute all of it in order to move to that next level. So, what you're describing to me in regards to how you're feeling, you're pushing through, you feel that upward spin because you're moving faster. And so you feel like you're ready to lift off, if you will, because your frequency is moving at such a high speed that you can't even see any pieces of it. Now enter that glitchy matrix thing that I just mentioned, and that sock you pulled out of the dryer, put on the dryer 5 minutes ago just disappeared because you can't see it. Because now, in that moment, you're in a timeline that is moving at a certain speed and you're moving at a different speed. And then, as soon as you recalibrate, now you see the sock, right?
Hmm.
And then now you
Right.
don't. And then now you
Yep.
do. And now you don't. So we think we're going crazy when actually what we're doing is we're changing. And this is a difficult part of what we're moving through right now because all of us are having, at least I haven't talked to anybody yet. I want to say all of us. It may not be every single person on the planet, but I would say if you're here and you're breathing and you're talking and you're above ground. Now, this is happening even for those who have transitioned, but let's just stick with those of us who are breathing at the moment. What is happening is we are truly in flux of this change, kind of like why people use the chrysalis and the butterfly effect kind of thing as good examples in this kind of scenario as well. Because all of a sudden we're in the goo. We were the caterpillar, now we're in the goo, becoming the butterfly, right? So we've heard that analogy through certainly consciousness spiritual circles for years, but I think we're into it so much now that people are understanding it from a different level because we are actually feeling it more than ever before. And we are moving into that 5D. Are we in 5D all the time? Part of me would tell you yes, absolutely. And yet, I would also tell you that we're still in the 4D and 3D as well to a degree. And that's because of the way we're in consciousness together, kind of as a one consciousness on the planet, trying to get through this crazy time while we're dealing with those lower frequencies of people, those lower frequency beings. They're there. Um, some of them have lost their memories, some of them were coerced. So, we could label them all we want to, but yes, are they there? They're there. Are they trying to keep us from moving higher? Well, that's kind of their job. So they're doing their job well. That doesn't mean we condone it. It doesn't mean they've won. If anything, it's showing that they haven't because they're in such a desperate mode. But what we need to do in our daily lives, as well as the world at large, as we move through this scope of time, is literally breaking ourselves away as much as we can consciously from that lower vibration. So now for you, you're already on a high trajectory. I know that about you, right? You've been a healer for years. You've been on spiritual journeys, consciousness journeys. You I would say all people that I know have really been on your path during your lifetime while you're here in order to help as many people as you can. Um, and because of that, I think you're in one of the most interesting, delicate, transitory spins of all because you still have your at least one foot, right?
Yeah.
Anchoring you into that 3D world because what I can see in your energy field is that there's a part of you that doesn't want to let go because you're afraid if you do let go of the 3D world, you're not coming back.
Oh,
Um,
I know I'm not. Yeah.
so, so there's a little bit of a fear there, but I can tell you just so you know, and I think you do know this actually, but I will share it with you in this transformational time. Even if you move that one foot out of the 3D world, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking off from the physical. What it means, though, is that you are transitioning into that a different physicalness with your physical body in more of that. I'll call it a 4D, 5D because you're still lifting out of the 3D. There is that 4D dimensional stuff. I think everybody out there has maybe a different take on what 4D really is. So I don't want to get too much into 4D because part of it for some people is something that's more ethereal than it is tangible. Or it could be the realm where I know a lot of intuitive psychics go or entities go to kind of hang out while they're in transition. Um, so there's a whole lot of different definitions. I like to look at it as just a part of our trajectory. We're just using it as a stepping stone to move from the denser material, corporeal body, then going into that 5D. Because if we go too quickly into 5D and we haven't had too much of a gentle movement through it, from the 4D could be a step that takes 2 seconds for some people, but for others it could take months or years and they may not, they might really need that time, right? So,
Right. Well, I see it just as what we would call the dream state. It's the
mhm.
astral.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And
I would agree with you there. Yeah.
the people that say they don't remember their dreams, I've had a lot of patients that said that. And I've said, no, you dream, you just don't remember your dreams. Everybody dreams. You
Hmm.
have to, or you would literally go crazy
Hmm.
because it is a time for the organic brain to kind of defrag, you know. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of got to line things back up. And so that happens during that time. But I find that the problem with being like in 5D or 6D or above is that it's so wonderful that you don't want to come back to 3D. But we have things to do in 3D yet through
Hmm.
this transition. Like, I'm fully aware that my soul does want to go back home.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I'm saying, please give me enough time because I have three beings that I'm waiting for here that I basically would feel terrible to leave 3D without seeing those beings on their way, you know? And so do that. Otherwise, I could just go fine out of here, you know? But it's that's holding me, and I'm aware of that. And while I'm here, I'm really trying to do as much as I can to help as many people as possible. And I want to make sure that that is done really well before I completely lift out of 3D.
Hmm.
And mainly because I want to make sure that I've done the job, you know?
Yeah. Well, just so you know, and I'm just going to be candid, I'm getting information I want to share with you. So your team, your guides, your angels, whatever you want to call them, want to assure you that you're not going to be leaving too early or too late. So,
Okay, good.
right? So they're saying you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. You have too much worry though. I keep hearing you're worried too much, and that's taking your attention away
Mm,
from all of the pieces and parts of what you just need to do. They said relax, that you can relax, and they understand the fear around some physical aspects we don't have to go through today unless you want to, but there's an understanding, and that understanding is, the body is reacting based on some previous contracts and some other things from past lifetimes. But when it comes to the actual movement of your soul into the next higher experience, truly is, that's all in good order. They said you're worrying too much that something's not right when it actually is right. And that the key right now is focusing on the heart. The heart chakra specifically came up, and that love itself. And we've kind of known this from I think, a larger picture. A lot of people are talking about love these days, for sure. It's important. Some people get it, some people don't. That's okay. We're all going to get there no matter what. But the heart is really incredibly important to what we're going through. What's happening in the heart chakra is changing. The chakras actually are changing or have changed. So there's some people seeing, some readers, healers, some people are noticing this when they're doing healing work. I know I've noticed it, that we're moving into more of a crystal-like structure. It's crystalline looking. It's not necessarily the chakra colors that we used to see, right? There's some
right.
other things that were kind of maybe kind of took us on a different trajectory for certain reasons. But what is happening right now is that the heart opening is incredibly important for everybody on the planet. And I think you are feeling it specifically for the things you're doing because you are so connected, especially when you mention three people. I would say I think there's six people. I keep getting six. There's another three that are
Mm,
either connected to the three. If you've got a person and maybe a family connected to the person, there's something going on there. We could explore that if you want, but there are six people that three may be a little more subconscious, but are connected somehow to these three. So whoever those three people are, I'm not getting names specifically. I'm kind of getting one visual, but we can leave that off for right now. What's more important is that your heart chakra yours is already open. You've had a big open heart chakra for the most part, most of your life. There are areas of that heart chakra that are closed, though, to certain people, places, things. I don't want to go too far into that. It could be that it's maybe, I don't want to say a group because I don't want to put a label on something. I think that you would kind of probably know what it is. I would say if you're finding that you're closed off to a person, a place, or a thing, or a group of people, if that's coming up in your world somewhere, somehow, when something like that shows up and you have a fear or there's anger, there's any emotion that is tied to it, you know that there needs to be work that has to be done there. And especially right now, as we're in the spin of our trajectory, as you called it, upward in our moving into higher consciousness, because those are the types of things that we have to fling off of us as we go into the spin of what we're going through as we acclimate higher. Now, the reason that's important is because we're holding judgment. Whenever we hold judgment on a person, a place, or a thing, or a group, blah, 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 we are holding ourselves captive to that judgment, to a theory, to an observation that may or may not be true. If you think of your body like a piano, it needs to be tuned every so often to ensure that it keeps in perfect health, perfect sound, perfect tone. Otherwise, it sounds off, right? Or ill, so to speak. It's incredibly noticeable to most of us. So a piano tuner has to come in and tighten or stretch each wire to its own perfect pitch for it to be healthy so it can be played appropriately. Now, our bodies are very similar. We need certain nutrients, movement, that kind of thing in order for our body to stay tuned, which is why I'm bringing this up now, because each and every part of us makes up the whole instrument. So we're not just tuning for one thing. So like the piano, we have several strings, wires, keys that need tuning and calibration for us to function smoothly. The tuning, if you will, creates a certain frequency. The frequency, or shall I say the multiple frequencies, make up the entire body. So things like our blood system has a frequency. Every organ has a frequency. Our cells each have their own frequency. So when we put them all together, it creates the entire blueprint of who we are. So my frequency will be different than yours, Dr. Val. And every person on the planet would have their own personal set of frequencies as well. We're each an individualized instrument. So if we bring this back around and talk about the heart chakra, you can think of it as being the core component for tuning the entire body. So when I look at someone's frequency, I'm looking for visuals, but also sound waves that indicate something is out of tune or out of balance. Because I'm a sound healer and utilize things like tuning forks every so often, I can actually hear the sound frequency of a physical body and the way that it puts out when I'm using a tuning fork. So when I say that there's a bend in your heart chakra frequency, if I actually had you in a chair or on a wellness table, I would be able to point it out to you and you would be able to hear it yourself. Once I can hear and feel out the area that the bend is in, I can then go in with a tuning fork and literally use that fork over and over again if I need to until I've moved that frequency back into place or tuned you up, so to speak. Now I can do that with energy as well and don't need to use a tuning fork necessarily, but having a tool like a tuning fork is wonderful for when we want to see and hear the entire experience in a more tangible way. Now, in looking at your body, Dr. Val, your heart chakra has an interesting bend to it. This is in two areas that are coming off the heart frequency. Where your heart is wide open and almost too wide, I would say at times, there are two smaller portions where the bend occurs. When I look at the area, I see the word judgment there. Now, of course, this is coming from our unseen friends and your body itself, because I've actually asked specifically to reveal what is causing this, right? So that indicates to me that you have either judged someone or something or maybe a situation that caused your heart to not break, but bend and go out of tune. So apparently it was obviously an emotional experience of some sort that was strong enough to affect your heart. It could have been a fight, disagreement with someone. It could be a lot of things. I suspect that it was probably throughout multiple lifetimes, and we could certainly, dig deeper to review that. But the key here is truly just looking at finding ways to get you back in tune.
That confirms what I had discovered last night.
Yeah, you want to
I
share?
could feel the energy of the solar flares building up,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't sleep. And so it's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna use the energy. And so I went to my phone booth to God, the shower, and I'm standing in the shower, and it suddenly occurs to me there's these people that I need to forgive. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to ask for their forgiveness too. Now, this is when I say ask for forgiveness, it doesn't mean you have to actually call them up and ask them for forgiveness, because then you might get sent off in another loop, you know. I mean, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But basically, these people, it's like, no, I'm not going to call them up because they're stuck in their little world and it's not going to be received well. And I know that. And they're very much asleep, you know. So I was like, all right, I need to forgive them for what they've done. And I'm asking through the ethers for them. In other words, I'm talking to their highest selves and I'm asking them to forgive me for my judgment because underneath it all, I do love them. And I recognize that what they did was very wrong and it was hurtful. And it's like, but it's okay because they could only act from where they are. You know, they can only act given a certain set of parameters of their consciousness. And I understand that. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, all right. So right now, this is coming up for me to deal with. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started working on that last night and working on the forgiveness of this one family member. And it's a lot of forgiveness that has to be done, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a whole
Sure.
lot. And and it extends, you know. So it's interesting. So you confirm that for me because I was like, oh, that's interesting. I haven't thought about these people in a long time because basically I just decided, you know what, they're toxic. I don't want to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I am working on me. And that was like, that got put on a shelf. But now I'm dealing with it
Mm-hmm.
because I need to. And I realize, you know, intellectually, I understand where they're coming from. And emotionally, I understand what that did to both sides of the issue. And so, because I understand that, it's up to me to do the work. Not that I have to do it for them, but I have to open the pathway for them to start to understand. And by doing that, that's healing that portion of my heart.
100%.
And,
Yep.
you know, as I've told people, you know, throughout my life, no one is healed alone. You know, you might think you're alone. If you're like me, you're doing the healing through the ethers. And, you know, because you know it's not going to work to even try to talk to these people because they can't hear it. And if they couldn't hear it before, they certainly can't hear it now. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a frequency thing, you know. And so understanding that, it's like, why create more frustration and more bad feelings when I know I can do it this way? And I can ask through the universe, you know, to change the circumstances to allow this healing to happen. And, you know, here I'm basically poking a little hole in the wall of their resistance
Mm-hmm.
just to say, hey, hi, love you. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's really what it is. And you're right and spot on in regards to the the work that we do when we do our inner work, as we call it, right? It
right,
all has to do with how we feel, not how the other person feels.
right.
So, I mean, obviously, if we've harmed someone and we feel remorse and we want forgiveness for our side of it, we understand we're trying to remedy that and we're trying to help whoever that person might be, if it's obviously a family member, friend, etc. Then obviously we want to try and be part of that remedy, not just band-aiding, but truly healing whatever that core wound might have been, especially if we were part of the reason that it happened in the first place. So all of those things are so important. But forgiveness, you know, to me, I always suggest to people, if you could have any superpower at all, my suggestion would be for everybody in the world to have forgiveness as your superpower, because this is how we move through things quickly, right? Um,
Exactly.
and
Well, and
so,
then the other thing too, Tam, is like, you know, I don't know how many other people do this. I know you do this as well, but I've been a catalyst for a long time, and it used to really upset me when I was younger because I didn't understand that I was a spiritual catalyst. And one of the things that happened as I was, you know, um, kind of opening up more to what is and finding my way through, like, how do I do this? Okay, now I know I'm a catalyst. How do I do this? And what I found was that I was getting instructions from my highest self. And I would follow those instructions. And I would always have the choice, do you want to be part of this or not? And most of the time I said, sure, I'll go ahead and I'll do this. It takes a lot of strength to do some of this catalyst work because people are going to hate you.
Yeah.
Whether they continue to hate you or not depends on their own spiritual path. So the forgiveness that you're seeking is actually from it's from their highest self, not from the 3D person,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to get it from the 3D person unless they gain awareness. And so I've been used to that my entire life. But one of the things that happened that that was difficult for me to understand with this whole evolutionary step up was that it happened automatically without my conscious permission. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just happened, and I thought, oh my God, I've lost my mind. I don't know how this happened. And I was upset. I was upset for quite some time, you know, at least a
Mm-hmm.
week, which is
Sure.
not normal for me because I'm normally pretty calm. I don't get anxious or anything else. But I was like, oh my God, like, how did this happen? And so I asked my highest self, and it took a while. I had to calm down enough, to get the answer. But then I was shown that, yeah, the reason that you were not asked is because we know that you always agree to do this work, and it's really hard work to do, and to still live in 3D. And we knew that you would refuse this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you're right. I would have refused that. And they said, but it had to be done. And you were in the position to do it. And I was like, okay, but like, thanks a lot. you know? And
So the higher
I
part
hope
of you is the one that drove that situation into reality. Is that correct?
the what?
Your
What
higher
was?
self, your
Yeah,
higher
my
self
highest
is
self.
the one who made it all happen the way it
Yeah.
had to happen. Yeah.
And I would have said no
Mm-hmm.
because of my compassion.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the whole picture. I didn't know that this was going to be a catalyst for change for that person. I didn't know that. I
Right.
thought it was going to make things worse. So for my 3D mind, I would have refused.
Mm-hmm.
And so my highest self was like, well, guess what? You don't get to refuse this time.
Yeah.
And it just did it. And then I was like, and I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I would never have done this. Like, what the heck? And I mean, Cam, I really thought that my mind was going. I, I really did,
Well, yeah.
because this was not something I would have done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
And
think,
so I was like, and then my highest self showed me, yeah, but you took on this job. This is what you do. This is what your energy is.
right.
And I was like, yeah, but, you know. And so I understand, why this kind of stuff happens. But it was still shocking because to me, because it was the first time that this was done without asking me first.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, boom, here it is.
Yeah.
And so it took my breath away. I was like, oh my God.
Now, is
And
this
so,
part of the piece of the forgiveness that you felt like you need to work on or did work on in regards to the rest of what you're talking about? I'm trying
no,
to
this
understand
was
your
separate. This
is
was another
separate.
thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what I did was I channeled my energy to help as much as I could after I found, well, as this was going on, I could feel what was going on. with the other person. And so I did everything I could to channel some of that angst and what was going on. I just kept praying for assistance for this person.
Mm-hmm.
And because I could feel it, and I was like, man, I would have not done this, My higher self was like patting me on the head, going, I know, relax, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, this one was hard. All the other ones, um, all the other times that's happened in my life, it has never been that big of an attachment of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could step back and I could say what had to be said and, set things in motion. And for the most part, most people would call me up like 3 days later and go, I hated your guts and I wanted to kill you. And, you know, that first day was that way. And I'm like, yep, that's normal. That's your ego that wants to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second day, it was a little bit better. And the third day, they realized the gift. And so that's happened most of the time. There's still a few people out there that hate my guts. And, it's like, okay, but that's their choice. Their choice was they could either deal with what came up for them to deal with or not. And a few have chosen not, and that's okay. That's their path. They just obviously, want to wait until the next turn comes around and be somebody else at the next time. So, I got a greater understanding of what it is to be a catalyst to other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Sure. But
And,
sometimes it's,
before that, I could always step back and go, it's okay. I don't really care. I don't give a shit that, this person hates me or that
right.
they really feel murderous towards me. I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't care. And the whole reason I didn't care was because although I had compassion for them, it wasn't that deep. It was a general compassion. It's like, okay, they need to hear this right now. They need to be upset. They need to go through this because it's coming up for them to clear it permanently. And so I was okay with it. So this is another level of catalysts that I didn't know I was going to have to go through.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of these
And
things are
uh,
moving through. I just want to kind of interject there because some of the information that was coming through while you were talking, who's George?
my late husband,
Oh, okay. So he was trying to come in there. Okay. All right. Well, that might, we might have to dig into that one because all of a sudden I'm like, who is this guy? So just coming in here. So I guess for now we'll say he's saying hello. But you were talking about the forgiveness pieces. You were talking about being a catalyst, and as you started talking, I kept getting this. George is here. George is here. George is here. So
oh yeah, I was a
I'm like,
big
okay,
catalyst
who's
for him.
George? Sorry. Okay. So
I was a huge catalyst for him.
yeah.
And I finally, this last year, I finally released him.
Mm,
And, before there was this tug at my heart. And this last year, I was able to go, you know what? It doesn't matter what we were. We loved each other, and that's the only important thing.
hmm
And I release you. And now I hadn't seen him in 4D for a long time, mainly because I was too attached. And as soon as I detached, then I saw him a couple times, when I was doing some rescue missions in 4D, and he turned out to be the one who was coming to pick us up twice. And
Oh,
I was
interesting.
like, "Oh, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long." And he said, "Yeah, it's good to see you too." And I was like, "That is so nice. I just had nice warm fuzzies in my heart, and that was it. There was no longing and no yearning for more connection. It was done."
So there's
So
something,
that's what.
yeah, that is really interesting. So there's something there, and it could just be a good heart feel since you kept saying, I don't know if you recognized it, just a few minutes ago, you were saying that, kind of tugging at your heartstrings, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Since we're talking about the heart, obviously, and that heart connection and heart opening, all of this that we're talking about inclusive of being the catalyst and forgiveness and all these things. There's a bigger picture here. I would ask to suggest for you to do some I would just do a little meditation. I don't think there's anything huge around it that has to be, some big, analyzation moment that you have to dig into. But I would say that there's a message there for you in regards to that heart process,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, in regards to was trying to see if there would be like a message or something from George, but I'm not getting words per se. He was just excited to pop in. And so that's why I was thinking maybe you would have something to say to George. But it's really interesting because the heart keeps being shown to me. Um,
Hmm.
Now your heart is in strong condition, but it also has a few spots like we talked about that need
Hmm.
that frequency adjustment. So
Hmm.
when I say that to you, how do you feel about that? Because there's something I'm trying to get to more of the piece of the frequency to make this an easy thing for you. Um, but I know that you're very intuitive. So physically, how are you feeling in your heart area?
Well, it normally feels pretty good unless I don't get enough sleep. Then I really feel that it's working hard.
Okay.
But I can see that I have two spots. They're small spots,
Mm-hmm.
but they're heart woundings, deep ones.
They're in the middle of if I were to show, I wish I had maybe I'll find a photo and kind of post this into the show here. What I'm seeing, Dr. Val, there is if I'm looking at your heart straight on,
Hmm.
I see it's a tiny, to me, it's going to look like a dark spot.
Right.
It's
Me too.
right. It's going to
Hmm.
be down to the left, so it'd be the right on your body, but it'd be down to the left of my visual, about a little lower than midway through into the left side of the heart. And then there's one in the dead center. Um,
Hmm.
they're deep, they're not surface. And those are
Right.
the spots. Now, those lead me to believe that those are coming from past life and not current life.
Mm.
So, so yes, they show up. If you were to go in and someone were to take a photo of that or an image, right? If you were going in
Hmm.
for imaging, you'd probably have a doctor say something, right?
Hmm.
But when I look at that, I actually see what could probably be, if I could hit a play button on those two spots, I would say there'd be a movie that's played for each one.
I'm
And
wondering if one of them was connected to George and that's why he popped in because we had a lot of lifetimes together.
yeah, I would say actually, now that you're saying that, when I look at that, I'm getting that one in the center is the
Hmm.
one that it gets brighter to me when you said that, right? When you actually made that statement. So, so there's a marking on your heart. He's a marking on your heart. That's probably why he came in today. We were talking about the heart. So,
Hmm.
you're just like, oh, did I hear my name? We're talking about the heart. So I think that there's something there to be looked at specifically for George. The fact that he kind of came in and swooped didn't necessarily have a message, but
Hmm.
wanted to be here, I think says a lot. And I think because we're talking about the heart and the heart frequency and the importance of it, and we're trying, again, we're looking at a broad scope of kind of what you're going through and the spin of everything, and the physical, mental, emotional of the changes we're going through. And then we're looking at what's the heart of the matter, right? So let's take
Hmm.
that, the heart of the matter. So if we move in to look at that piece, and that's why I'm encouraging you to take some extra time. That extra time could be a half hour, but it could be 5 minutes, right? Sometimes it's not long. When you just tap in, you say, oh, is there a message, or am I a catalyst for something else, or was he a catalyst for you in something that you need to look at that maybe wasn't finished when he was here, or maybe it's something that you're looking forward to in the next stage of frequency when we actually do move into the next shift. Yes, you're correct. If we kind of bridge back into some of our conversation, we look at solar flares, we look at things going on the planet, we look at the what looks like, I mean, it looks like the planet's going to hell at the moment, right? I mean, if anyone's turning on the news, I always say turn it off because those are the things that are not real. It's a movie, they're scripted, there's so much happening that isn't really what it seems to be. And so what happens, we buy into it, our heart gets all tangled up in it, right? So
Yeah.
those things affect us in so many ways. What does it do? It takes us away from the work. It takes us away from our inner work to move up and through during this time period where it's critical to move into the heart and the heart center so that we can use that as our catalyst to move into the next higher piece of consciousness that we need to do. So, yes, the light's one. If we look at the global scope of things, we know in all kinds of, at least I would assume to, from my perspective, I should say, from my perspective, people that I see, that I talk to, that I listen to, that I'm kind of understanding out in the world, and my team and my my guides and angels that give information back to me, we all kind of come to the understanding that the light has won, right? But
Hmm.
all of us as individuals are part of that light, and our
Yeah.
trajectory of how we get there and what it looks like is up to us. So that means we could all, if we all took a breath and understood this in a 2 minute conversation or a 20-minute conversation, or just had a moment on the planet where all of us were still, we could literally transition everything tomorrow and all of this would be gone. I mean, in a good
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah.
But because we're kind of like, oh, well, people are fighting over here and people don't understand over here and people aren't on their path. And, we go on and on and on with all kinds of things in our heads. So if we tap into all the chaos, we cannot hear ourselves. We cannot hear our heart. We cannot
Right.
move ourselves, right? You can't tune your frequency when there's noise. You just can't. So the key is we all have to become our own tuner of our own instrument. And we can ask for assistance for sure. Can we ask our guides, our angels, whatever you believe in, universe, the tree outside your front door? I don't care what it is because you're connected to what you're connected to. So you tap into that piece and you ask for that assistance um, in working with how to tune up the physical, mental, emotional, ethereal bodies. So, so Val, for you, I actually know that this was something that I think a lot of people can, even if they don't understand it, they've probably felt it before without really knowing what they were feeling. When we have outside elements affect us, like solar flares, like the energetics on the planet, we'll get thrown off. That's okay. We usually come back together in one piece. It just sometimes, to your point, you went through this last night. I know I didn't sleep well last night. I woke up this morning with all of this. Oh, you got to do this, this, and this, and you got to do it now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't you tell me 3 weeks ago? Because you couldn't do it 3 weeks ago, right? It's
Yeah.
it's all these
Right.
things, right? So for all of us, if we need to be patient, loving with ourselves, obviously that's a big, 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 big thing right now. We don't have to have all the answers right now, and more than likely we're not going to. So someone as brilliant as you are, as educated as you are, as spiritual as you are, you're going to have a lot of answers for a lot of other people. And in this very moment, or in the moment last night or this morning, you're going to have a moment where you need the rest of us to help you. And I'm going to need you to help me at some point when I'm going through these things. This is the point, is that we are here right now to really understand from a much, much deeper, higher level on how we really truly do get through these things, because we are having to deal with little things which may not seem little in our lives, so I understand that. But in the big scope of the planet, we're going to call it a little thing, where we have to feel the turbulence, right? We have to feel the
Right.
turbulence to go, oh, I'm not. that something's not right here, or maybe it's right, but it's feeling weird. So now I got to figure out what I need to do. Do I need to recalibrate the physical, or do I actually need to recalibrate my emotional, mental? And to your point, when we're in a moment, we're we're feeling like we're going crazy. It's because we're tapped into our physical body. We're not literally tapping into our um 5D or higher body, right? Um,
Well, and I think it makes it more complicated when, working as a healer, we're also dealing with other people's stuff.
Absolutely. Hmm.
I mean, if you're dealing with your own stuff, that's hard enough. But when you've taken on the job of dealing with other people's stuff and you're helping kind of behind the scenes, that adds a whole other dimension of complications, And
Yeah,
and it's like, oh man, sometimes it just becomes overwhelming because and I have to keep reminding myself we're able to do these things and this is why it's happening.
right.
Because if we were only dealing with ourselves and not able to help anybody else, it's because we're not capable of helping anybody else. So because we have the capability and we do what we can to help from, whatever level that we're working on at the time, it makes it a lot more complex and it adds so many moving parts. But then I have to remind myself, okay, what about the great beings who have created this entire creation from the beginning? So, from the one that became many, that then became many more, that became many more, what about the ones higher up the food chain, so to speak, who are having to deal with all of us, So
Yeah,
like here I am going, oh, whoo, hoo, hoo, poor little me, you know? And then I get reminded of the one who is in connection with everybody and is not answering just my prayers, but, everybody else's.
absolutely. Yeah. But when you feel the love to the extent of what can be given, it knocks you off your feet for sure.
Yeah.
And you do have a change of perspective of life, of the universe in general, even if you can't explain it. And there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different views and opinions on several of these types of things. No one's necessarily wrong. Everyone has a different way of experiencing. And for someone who hasn't, some folks who are more realistic in the sense where they need, realistic and reality based, I should say, where they have to see something to believe it, right?
Hmm.
Um, those those are the folks who I know would love to have an experience like you had. Um, and those are also sometimes those same folks are the ones that when I see them are the ones with the heart that's actually closed up a little bit
Yeah.
because their frequency isn't open enough to be able to believe it before they see it. They have to actually do the seeing, the visualization, or have some sort of experience. So I definitely understand that. But it is an interesting thing when you look at the frequency base, because the frequency of that person, of the physicality of the body, will reflect the mental, emotional. And we can actually see disease, you can see dysfunction, all kinds of things in the energy field way before it gets into the physical. So if you actually can catch something, like for me, if I can catch something that's around somebody or see it in their energy field, then we can correct it before it ever gets into the body and that person would never get sick.
Right.
And it's very interesting because it does start within the field
Right.
and how long it remains in the field, before it gets tuned up, it's different for every person. At the end of the day, I think that what's really important here is how we understand ourselves to the best of our ability in the moment so that we can move past it and know that we're going to be okay, right? Um, no matter what you went through last night, no matter how bad today seemed, I can already tell you're in a completely different space now than you were this morning.
Hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, your physical body, I can see, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how,
Because every time that you let something go that is an impediment to raising your frequency, every time you let that go, that allows the higher frequency to move in.
Mhm,
And for me, it is all connected to love because my whole life has been about truth and love. And that's it. That's all I'm interested in, you know?
mhm,
And so I searched for that since I was a child and, looked at every aspect that I could. And I can tell you that part of my wounding had to do with how I perceived what other people were doing. And as well, sneak attacks and everything else. And it takes a while sometimes to learn to stay away from the negative energies because they will hurt you every chance they get. And so, learning that, as you grow, then you learn how to heal yourself. And, I've been on that path, as you know, for a long time now because I had to. It was either that or I would have been off the planet. So, I'm pretty good at healing other people, and it came to be my time to heal myself.
mhm,
And the heart is always the first thing that I look to because if you're wounded, and this happens to a lot of healers, by the way, so all you healers out there, if you're a wounded healer, which most are, then the first place to start is your heart. And that will override the stinking thinking, the programming that's been put in your brain.
right,
And it will start chinking away all of the crap that's been like concrete in your brain, you know, that has caused you to think the negative thoughts. So you can reverse it all. Sometimes it can be so quick it'll just shock you. But like between last night and this morning, it hadn't occurred to me that, oh, hey, wait a minute. I need to forgive these other people. And I need to really look at it from that higher perspective that I was gifted with many times throughout my life, not only through my life, but through my near-death experiences. I have no excuse for not looking at it from a higher perspective because I have it. And so I started going, wow, what the heck was going on with me that I wasn't paying attention to this? And so as we've been talking, like I've been having like this little side conversation with my highest self and George and these other people, and pulling everybody together and going, hey, let's heal this. Let's
mhm,
heal it now, once and for all, and just allow the divine connection to heal us all instantaneously. And that includes everybody that's listening to this. Open your heart and allow the divine connection of the one, the prime creator, to flow through you and to heal you and to heal everybody that's connected with you. Because the moment that you do that, even the tiniest spark that gets to another person that's connected to you, and we're all connected to a whole lot of people that we don't even think about most of the time, but allow that connection to happen. And it's like, it's, the one spark that lights a huge fire. So let's all do that like right now. See that tiny spark just going out, like electric, you know, going out into all the people that you're connected to and saying, hey, wake up, open the heart. This is so important for all of us. And I mean, look at just the short time that we've been talking, a change has happened within me because I allowed that to happen. And I was asking for this to happen before we started this conversation. I was asking for help to be able to allow full forgiveness and to ask through the ethers for full forgiveness from these other people because it's a two-way street. You got to stop thinking that you're a victim and somebody did this to you. It's no, this is the part in the play where you agreed to play the victim and they agreed to play the aggressor or the abuser, or whatever you want to call it. There's two sides to these things that happen. And so forgive. If you were given a medication that really hurt you, forgive. That's how you get rid of these things that happen. You
Exactly.
know, you could go and sue them, sure, and a lot of people do. And, that has to happen too for accountability. But if you want to heal yourself, you got to get out of the victim mentality and realize that, hey, there's two sides to this. We agreed to do this for some reason, whatever it was. You don't have to know. But now you can forgive. Right now, in this moment, right now, forgive and ask for forgiveness.
And in that one moment of conversation, Val, your heart
Mm-hmm.
frequency straightened out, just to let
Yeah,
you. I
thank you.
actually good
It's
job.
cool, isn't it?
I need an applause track here. Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
Yeah,
as you were talking, I'm listening, and that there's a very specific part of inner work that's important that I think a lot of people miss. And the important part is the emotional piece that gets us moving. So
yeah,
we can talk all we want to. If we do not believe it, we don't feel it, right? It's the feeling part. That is who we are. So if it takes you 100 times to say, I forgive myself, and then you get into it, even if you have to scream it, it's the not that it's the screaming part, but it's the piece of the elevated emotion that hooks into the cellular memory. And when we do that, that is when it's kind of like shattering the glass with the right high frequency note, right?
yeah,
It's you, as soon as you can match the frequency piece of it, this is how things heal and mend. This is how sound healing works. It's how even you could. There's so many things we could talk about, but even in cancer research, they're using laser frequencies that actually do have sound with the laser, but it's a frequency, as you probably know this, and they're studying it in all kinds of different disease and cancers in certain areas, especially prostate cancer. I think there was a study being done in the UK a few years back, but they were using it specifically because they understood that once they matched the frequency, the prostate, whether it's a tumor, whether it's whatever else is going on, cancer in the area, everything would shift as soon as they could hit the right frequency. The challenge is we're all different physical bodies, right? So we don't resonate at the exact same frequency. So it's not like a one size fits all. You have to
right.
get there. And this is the whole point of what even you're talking about. It's doing it now. Well, you may not have been able to do it 10 years ago. And maybe someone listening is saying, I've tried that forgiveness crap for years and it still doesn't work. Well, if that's kind of where they're at emotionally, they just aren't ready or weren't ready, but we're in a different frequency now. And
Yeah,
you do have to, especially with forgiveness, you do have to mean it. You can't just say
yeah,
it just to say it because someone wants you to say it. You want to mean
right.
it. And it's not like, oh, Val, I want you, to forgive me because I want you to forgive me. I need you to forgive me for me, right? It's back to
Hmm.
I need to go free or vice versa. It just, we are the ones that are living in the stuck energy, that are living in the frequency fallout, if you will, which way that may go, right? That could be a couple of different ways. So, as we're talking about all these things, this whole conversation in the culmination of energetics and frequencies and our thoughts, our feelings, all of these things just are coming to the surface right now, so that, don't be surprised if you're going to feel great now. And then there could be another couple of days go by. We are ramping up, of course, more with the solar activity. We have all kinds of other things going on the planet. So little things can be our trigger. If we,
Yeah.
but the more we learn how to go within and sit with whatever it is that's coming up, even if we can't really see it, right? We don't know what it is, can't put a label on it, we don't have the words for it, but it doesn't feel good. Then the key is really sitting with it. You're going to go into your heart, find the
Mhm.
love that understands a perception of it better than we do. Because
Yeah.
from a human standpoint, our brains are not tuned up enough to be able to assimilate the information, but the body is. So the body, as much as we can create something that feels uncomfortable, we can actually create the opposite, where the cellular memory takes over and knows exactly what to do with whatever it is that you're feeling. And then if it can be obviously something that we're trying to recognize, we're trying to figure out what to do with it because it's sitting there in some form that doesn't make sense, that's when we can call in our angels, guides, turn it over to God, whatever you want to do, source, creator. Again, universe, use your terms because this is all about whoever's listening. It's not about me or Dr. Val or what we talk about. It's about how you assimilate it into your own world. So you take that piece, you sit with it in its energetic form, and if you've got nothing else to do, you just love it. And you love it. You thank it for what it's showing you. You're trying to understand. If you can understand, great. Give me the information so I can move through it. If not, take it, move it through so that I don't have to deal with it anymore because I got other stuff to do. Right. And I think this is the key is that some people think they have to go into therapy for 20 years to try and really analyze something that's going on in their world now. Now,
Yeah, and that doesn't usually work for most people. I mean,
yeah,
therapy helps. It helps you to learn
cope
how
to
to
deal.
function
Mm-hmm.
in the world,
Right.
but it doesn't remove all the stuff that's deep down for the most part. I mean, sometimes it
Absolutely.
does, but yeah, I mean, people get hung up on the words a lot too. It's like, when I speak to someone about forgiveness, they think that means that they need to go track down everybody that they've hurt and in 3D fashion ask them for forgiveness. And then they're worried about what the person's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of a case that I had many years ago where they sent me in. I was a nurse at the time, home health nurse. And they sent me into this one home where they said, "You're not going there for the patient, you're going there for her daughter," who asked if we had anybody who knew anything about the Eastern religions. And they said, "Boy, do we have a nurse for you." And so they sent me in. And so I went and I did the normal thing with the mother. This was a mother and daughter who had hated each other vehemently all of their lives. And I mean dripping venomous hate. And what had happened was the daughter had left as soon as she could. And now, here, many years later, the mother was dying of terminal heart disease, which makes sense because she was a horrible, nasty person, and to her daughter. And so they sent me in. So I spoke with her. We talked about many things. Every visit that I went to monitor the mother, I was there talking to the daughter. And so I spoke to her about forgiveness. And she said, "Oh, she hates me. So, like, what's going to happen if I ask her to forgive me?" I said, "First, you tell her that you forgive her for everything that she did that you felt was wrong or that she felt was wrong. And then you ask her for forgiveness. And if she spews more hate at you, just go, okay, that's your choice. And just know that, just tell her, look, this is my true feeling. I do forgive you. And I'm sorry that, that it ever happened like this." And so she took a deep breath and she said, "Okay." And so the next time I came, she said, "Wow, I had no idea this could happen." She said, "We both forgave each other and we cried and we hugged and such love happened." She said, "I don't want her to die now." The previous week, she had been wishing that she'd die quickly, you know, because she was so nasty and miserable to her. And here, both of them had their hearts healed. And then a week later, the mother passed.
Mm,
And, it was such a beautiful thing for me to see that. I mean, I knew that could happen. But, remember, if you feel like you need to go and speak the forgiveness to someone or ask for it, then realize that it doesn't matter how they respond if they respond in the negative. If they do, just go, okay, that's your choice.
right.
I forgive you. I hope that you can forgive me at some point, and then turn around and walk off and leave it alone. It's not something where you have to go and beg for forgiveness or anything like that. What really matters is what's in your heart. Because, the hardest thing for people is to forgive themselves, especially if they're a really good person. Those are the ones that have the hardest time forgiving themselves.
Mhm.
And that has to happen. Because if you can't forgive yourself and love yourself, then what have you got to offer to anybody else? How
Oh,
can you
yeah.
forgive them? How can you love them?
100%. 100%. And it is the most difficult. I mean, I know I've
Yep.
been there, you've been there. It is hard. Sometimes that we sit there and go, well, I know I would give this advice to somebody else, but it's very difficult for me to do XYZ, right? And and it is, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it is really truly one of the most important keys to our livelihood in regards to the trajectory we were talking about earlier about moving into that higher understanding of ourselves and being able to let go of things. Because if we hold on to it, that's like holding on to a rope when you're water skiing and you're underwater, right? Thinking
Yeah.
you can still, get a good go at the top when you're already 20 feet down. Whatever the case is, we go through all types of emotional baggage with that. But
Yeah.
truly, it is an important piece to our evolution, really. If you think about everybody on the planet doing that one thing for themselves, again, we'd be a very, very different place if we were to practice just a couple of things we've talked about today in regards to just the heart and understanding the forgiveness piece. And my goodness, we could get to just forgiving ourselves. Everything changes. Just
Yeah.
energetically, everything changes.
Yeah.
So, a solar flare or ridiculous, newscast kind of thing that's going on, wouldn't affect anybody because they're like, right? We're not taking it
Yeah.
into the emotional body. So if we bring it back, because I know we're kind of going long today, if we were to wrap it up, is there anything that you've gone through? Because obviously I know you had a tough last night and early morning. So is there anything there that we haven't talked about or that I can do for you right now while I have you here?
I
You
guess if there's any messages that my spiritual team's trying to get through to me that I'm not getting, hit me with that.
Other than George flying by again and saying, "Please, would you have her connect with me?" That's really, he definitely has come in. Again,
Oh,
on his way out, I keep asking if he has a message, but he's like, "No, I just wanna connect." So there's something there. I would just say that heart connection with him is probably
hmm
good, since I am seeing that little black spot in that heart in the center of your heart chakra. That does not have to do with this lifetime.
hmm
Actually, let me see real quick. I can probably share that with you. Give me half a second. I'm going to double check on let's see what something to do with you've had let me see, over 20. You've had over 20. I'm not going to go through all these because it'll take too long, but I would say right now what I'm getting is you've had over 20 lifetimes with him, probably
hmm
closer to 30, maybe more. But what I'm being given is there's something in the eighth lifetime that you've spent together with him that is the cause of that. So, of course, that means nothing to us if we don't know what's going on in the eighth lifetime, right? What
Right.
I'm being shown here is there was some sort of heartbreak, some sort of damage that was done. I don't even know that you were married, to be honest, at that juncture. I'm trying to get a hit on
hmm
that. You were definitely friends, is something to do with a connection between the two of you that was heartbreak, as in there was a situation that occurred between the two of you where it was almost like that unrequited love. where
Hmm.
he turned his back and walked a different direction when he should have stayed. And
Was that the one where he was imprisoned right after that?
let me ask, yes.
Ah,
Yeah, so if you know something there, I would say yes. So
yeah.
I'm getting a big yes.
Okay.
There was something to do with couldn't commit. There was something happening there that you needed something, and he like a fight, really. But it's
Hmm.
a different. It's a very interesting. It's almost like it doesn't feel that it was earthbound. It feels other planetary, but it could be something that maybe it's just a different timeline. I'd have to go into further, like more of a deep dive, which I know I don't have time to do right now, but I would say we could do that another time if you want. But right now, what it feels like is he wants to talk to you just about that. He doesn't feel like it's a big deal, but he wants to, since we were talking about forgiveness, I think that's when he swooped in. So I think he's looking for the forgiveness. He wants to discuss that with you. So
Okay.
if you can
Cool.
just do that, I think then he will be good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. It was really fun talking to you today and
Oh, it's
connecting
always fun
on
talking
information.
with you.
It's always, we'll have to do this more often for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, thank you so much. If anything comes up, you let me know. You know how to reach me.
Okay. And thank you.
And absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this special episode at the Wonder Network. For those wanting to reach out to Tam, you can go to her website at Insight Energetics, but we have also posted her contact details on the screen. She has graciously given our audience exclusive special pricing for anyone who wants to schedule time with her. So make sure to take advantage of that offer if you are inspired to book a session. That's all for now, and we'll see you next week.